for more of a 30-ish, 30 to 45 degree angle there. And it all has... My two paddles are not in line with one another. That is not even with that. They're offset. To place one in the water, the other is not facing the same direction. Why? Why is this? That paddle is now even. This is what we can call a 0-degree feather, near enough. This is not how most people paddle. Most people will paddle between 30 and a 45-degree feather. Yeah, there we go. When you pick up your paddle, you take your dominant hand. For most of you, it's going to be the right hand. You line up the first knuckles with the top edge of the blade. It will look something like that. The dominant hand stays in that position at all times. It does not slip around on the paddle. If you do find your hand slipping around on the paddle, you can put some tape, electrician's tape or anything on there to help stick that. Any adjustments that you need to make on either blade in terms of the angle of that blade is always done with the dominant hand only. You do not underload twist with both wrists. You twist with the dominant wrist, and the non-dominant wrist, for most of you that's the left hand, is simply allowing the paddle to rotate in your hand. So in this position, if I want to place my left blade into the water, I go for a forward stroke and watch this wrist. I go for a forward stroke with a 30-degree feather on the blade, and it lines up quite perfectly to go in. Why? Well, if we take a step back in history, when I started paddling, paddles had a 90-degree feather. So what you had to do when I wanted a paddle stroke on my left side, I needed to twist my top wrist back quite aggressively to line that up. We've since stepped away from that and we go for more of a 30-ish, 30 to 45 degree angle there. And it all has to do with getting the correct angle between your wrist on the top hand and the wrist on the bottom hand. Now, if we take this and put it 0 degrees, now if I want to line up the left blade, my right wrist is bent forward like this. When you bend your wrist forward like this, it is incredibly damaging for your wrist to bend it forward like this and then to do anything under load. So you will see freestylers doing this, but they normally paddle with very low angle. But for you, if you want to paddle real whitewater, you want to be between 30 and 45 degrees of feather. The idea is to get the correct wrist relief when paddling. Now, I've explained the how and the why of this. Now let's look at some myths. Going all the way back through as much documentation as I've ever found in my paddling, I've often heard it said that the feather offset of your paddle is so that when you're paddling forward in a sea kayak, that when you place a blade in the water, the other blade can cut through the air and the wind cannot affect you. But really, it's kind of nonsense. The reason for your feather is simple: to give the correct wrist offset when forward paddling, stopping you rotating your wrist in. For those of you who think everyone should just paddle 0-degree feather, if you're a playboater, fine, paddle it. You're not really driving a boat forward. Everything is rotational as a playboater, and it gives massive advantages for when you're doing loops and stuff like that, because you can place power on both blades at once in the water. But anyone except for a playboater really shouldn't be paddling with 0-degree feather. 0-degree feather is a great tool if you're using it in the right place. But if you want to propel yourself downriver with power and safety, use between 30 and 45 degree feather.